This story is about market secret in Akwata. Have you ever noticed that market women scold you if you try to bend down in the market? Or has your grandmother ever warned you never to bend over and look between your legs there? Have you ever thought about doing it just to see what might happen? In the quiet village of Ungu, surrounded by dense forests and flowing rivers, life was simple yet full of mysteries. The elders, known for their wisdom, often warned the villagers about many things. But one rule stood above all others: do not bend down and look between your legs in the market. This command echoed from one generation to the next, carved into everyone's mind, and no one dared to ask why except for Azaka. Azaka was the only child of Atawa and Eze, a couple who had faced 5 long years without a child. They had experienced 6 painful stillbirths, leaving them broken and hopeless. So when Azaka was finally born, the whole village celebrated as if he were a blessing from the gods. His parents named him Azaka, meaning thanks to the gods, and cherished him deeply, fearing to do anything that might offend the gods who had blessed them with a child. Growing up, Azaka could feel his parents' deep love and fear, but instead of respecting them, he became rebellious, uncontrollable, and proud. He ignored the village elders, laughed at traditions, and made fun of anyone who tried to correct him. People whispered that he might be cursed and should be raised with caution, but Azaka's parents, blind with love, couldn't rein him in. One evening, while sitting with his friends under a bamboo tree, the topic of the market rule came up. The other boys shivered at the thought of bending down and looking between their legs in the market, but Azaka, smirking with pride, dismissed their fears. "Is that all it takes to scare you?" he sneered. "A simple rule about bending down and looking between your legs. Nothing will happen, I'm sure of it." His friends exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, Ikena, spoke up. "Azaka, the elders say it's dangerous for a reason. Why would you want to risk it?" Azaka waved him off with a laugh. "The elders just want to control us. Tomorrow I'll go to the market and prove to you all that it's just a silly superstition." The boys looked nervous. "Don't do it, Azaka. What if something bad happens?" another friend urged. Azaka grinned even wider. "You can all come and watch. I'll bend down, look, and nothing will happen. You'll see for yourselves how foolish these rules are. Come with me tomorrow and you'll see." Respect traditions and wisdom. Elders often create rules not to control, but to protect. Their wisdom comes from experience, and dismissing it out of pride can lead to regret. Be humble, and open-minded arrogance can blind us to valuable insights. Staying humble allows us to learn and grow. Think before acting. Rushing into risky actions to prove a point can lead to consequences that could have been avoided with patience and thoughtfulness. He said to them, despite their better judgment, his friends couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. Perhaps it was Azaka's boldness, or maybe their own hidden desire to witness the forbidden. Either way, they agreed to go with him to the market the next day. The following afternoon, the market was alive with the usual bustling and hustling. The sun beamed down on the vendors, seeing spices, fabrics, and clay pots. While the sound of lively chatter filled the air, Azaka arrived with his friends trailing behind him, nervous but eager to see what would unfold. He strutted through the market, his confidence unshaking. While his friends shot worried glances at one another. "This is it," Azaka said, stopping in the center of the market. Then he turned to them and said, "Now watch and learn." Before his friends could say anything else, Azaka spread his legs and bent down and looked through the space in between them. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The market looked same, and the people continued their businesses. Azaka smiled, about to mock his friends for their fear, but then it happened. The world around him began to twist, colors blend into one another. And the once bright and bustling market grew dim and silent. The people seemed to slow down, moving as though in a dream. Azaka's smirk faltered and panic crept into his heart. But before he could straighten up, he saw them. Dark figures, tall and silent, roamed the Mara, creatures from shadowy skin and glowing eyes that pierced through the veil of the ordinary world. They glided among the villagers unseen by anyone else, their bodies whispering against the air as they moved. They were not human. There was something else entirely, spirit of a realm. Azaka had no business entering. One of the spirit turned its head towards him, its glowing eyes looking onto his. Azaka's body froze in place. "Now you see us, Azaka," it whispered in a voice that felt like ice sink through his soul. "Now you belong to us." Azaka froze as he heard that. He tried to stand up, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stand back up. His legs were glued to the ground and his spine felt like it was held in a place by an invisible force. He gasped, trying to call out to his friends, but his voice was trapped in his throat. He was paralyzed, his body bent. Unnaturally, his gaze locked between his legs. The spirit had seen him, and they had claimed him. Azaka's friends watched in horror as he began to struggle. At first, they thought he was playing a trick, but as his body trembled and his eyes grew wide with terror. They realized something was terribly wrong. His mouth opened as if he was trying to scream, but no sound came out. Without a word, the boy turned and ran as fast as their legs could carry them, their hearts pounding with fear. They didn't stop until they reached Azaka's house, breathless and shaking their BST, shouting for awe and Azo can in the market. Something is wrong with him. The parents, panic, followed the boys as they are to the market, and on the way they alerted the village chief priest. When they arrived, the crowd had already gathered around Azaka, who remained bent over, frozen in the middle of the market. His body was twisted in an unnatural position, his eyes wide with terror. The chief priest stepped forward, his face green. He knelt beside Azaka, placing his hand on the boy's head. He chanted softly, but after a few minutes he stood up and shook his head. He has seen what no moron should see, the priest said. The spirits that roam the market are the guardians of our realm. They live between our world and the next, ensuring balance. But once you see them, they see you, and when they do, they mark you. What can we do? Near the world, clutching her husband, the priest looks down at Azaka with the sorrowful eyes. I will try to communicate and appeal to the spirit and see if they will release him. As the sun began to set over him, casting long shadows across the village, Azaka remained trapped in that same twisted position in the middle of the market. His body was still bent, his gaze feed through his legs, unable to rise, unable to speak. His face, which had once been filled with arrogance and defiance, was now frozen in fear and pain, sweat glistering on his skin as his limbs trembled from the strain. But no matter how hard he struggled, he could not break free from the invisible hold of the spirit. His mother near the world, at the edge of the crowd, her cries piercing the air. Though Azaka had been a terror to the community, disobedient, reckless, and disrespectful during the village masquerade festival, Azaka had unmasked a masquerade and used a whip to pursue the mask. Or was it the one he until the goat that belongs to the chief priest and took it home? He had committed so many scary that denied the culture and tradition of But staring at him at this moment, the villagers saw not the troublemaker but a young boy, their own son, suffering in a way that no one deserved to help him. Please, someone help my son, and they cried, falling to her knees beside him, clutching his rigid legs as if her touch could somehow bring him back. Her husband Oya stood behind her, his face pet, his eyes filled with despair. Though Azaka had often caused them shame, they could not bear to see their only child, the boy they had waited for so long, in such agony. The villagers, despite their frustration with Azaka's behavior, could not help but feel pity for him now. Mothers shielded their children's eyes, and fathers shook their heads, silently praying to the gods to release the boy from the spirit grabs. It was a horrifying sight, one no parent, no matter the child's fault, should ever have to witness. The chief priest, his face grave, stood over Azaka, his staff planted firmly in the ground. He had tried everything in his power to communicate with the spirit, to plead for their mercy, but each time his chant filled the air, they were met with silence. The spirit were unmoved. There must be something you can do to help us, Ora pleaded, his voice trembling. Please, great deal. He is our only child. Please. The priest shook his head. Slow, holy, I have done all I can. The spirit do not respond to our prayers. His faith is in their hands. The crowd murmured in despair. They have heard stories of such things happening in the past, but none had ever witnessed it firsthand. The marketplace, once bustling with life, had now grown airy and quiet. The vibrant energy drained as the shadow of ducks deepened. Azaka's friends, who had earlier urged him to stop, stood on the edge of the crowd. Guilty and fear etched on their faces. They had followed him out of curiosity, out of awe at his boldness, but now they wished they hadn't. At the last ray of the sunlight disappeared, casting the marketplace into twilight. Azaka's strength began to eff his body, already strained from the unnatural position, but the spirit still held him there, forcing him to remain bent and helpless. His breath came in rage, gasp, and tears streaming silently down his face. The chief priest decided to try one last time and offer prayers to the spirit. With a deep sigh, he began to chant again, his voice low and sober, offering the faint prayers to the heavens above. And then, just as the first stars blinked into the night sky, a strange stillness came over the marketplace. The air felt different, lighter, softer, as if something unseen had shifted from there. Azaka's body, which had been stiff and trembling, suddenly relaxed. His leg buckled, and he collapsed to the ground, unconscious but no longer held by the spirit. Gasped. Ned screamed and rushed to his side, cradling his limp body into her arms, rocking him back and forth. The villagers gathered around, some whispering prayers, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The care had been lifted, but the damage had been done. Azaka survived, but the lesson was clear. The warning of the elders were not to be ignored. The spirits that roam in the market were real, and their wrath was swift and unforgiving. From that day onward, no one dared to question the old ways, and the story of Azaka, the boy who defied the gods, was passed down for generations as cautionary tale. The village was forever changed, and so was Azaka. When he woke up the next morning, his voice was gone, his body weak, and his spirit broken. He had challenged the ancient warnings and lost. Some tradition exists for reasons far beyond human understanding. Curiosity, if not tampered with respect, can lead one to one's undoing. As a parent, train your children in the way that is right, so that when they are old, They will not depart from it.